Mr. Shapiro, you talked about white privilege, and just this week, I had a conversation with Rachel Lazar, who's done some work, a Jewish American woman who's done some work on this area, as well as having extensive conversations with Dr. Greg Parks of Wake Forest University, who's also talked quite a bit about critical race theory. And it's my understanding that white privilege is not telling individuals that they cannot speak, but it is a term for societal privilege that individuals have as a benefit of their white skin. And I don't think that, and I think universities would be remiss to then say that because you're white, you're not allowed to say anything that's critical of white people. I didn't know that white privilege actually went into that sphere. My understanding is it's just, and the issue is that white privilege makes people uncomfortable to talk about the societal privilege that they have.
Well,
What's up, Patriots? Welcome back to Rights Rally, where we talk truth, logic, and good old-fashioned American common sense. Today, we're reacting to a conversation featuring Ben Shapiro, where he debates the concept of white privilege and whether or not it actually promotes understanding or just shuts people down. Now, I've watched the entire exchange, and let me tell you, this is exactly the kind of discussion that highlights the divide between rational debate and emotional politics. So let's get into it.
to me, what I say on campuses all the time is if you want to cite instances of racism that we can all find and fight together, that's something that I'm more than willing to stand next to you and fight, because that's obviously stuff that we should fight together. But when you just say that there is a white privilege out there in the ether and that by dint of birth your skin color generates for you an advantage, what you're really saying to people is that your view is less valuable because you have not experienced what I've experienced. And that is an identity argument, that's a character argument, that's not a rational political argument that can actually be taken on in any way. It's more of a cudgel and a club than it is an attempt to open a discussion.
Well, I think it's a demonstrable evidence that through society's demographics that being white has societal privileges that being black does not. But
we can talk about how that manifests, because that's
I'm also interested in what you just said now, is that you would stand next to anyone who has this. So, Mr. Shapiro, my question to you is, for Ms. Dunston, the tying the noose around the campus and writing messages that target African-American young students, would you consider that hate speech, and then would you stand next to her and fight for her?
As I say, I would. This is the first I'm hearing about it, honestly. But
really,
yeah. But from hearing about it, maybe because it's local. I mean, I'm from LA. But in any case, I'm more than happy to stand alongside her and fight whatever group was responsible for this. Not only more than happy. I mean, you're talking about the alt-right. Again, I was the #1 target of anti-Semitic harassment from the alt-right last year. So I'm more than happy to do all that. And I think there's one more distinction that has to be made. When we talk about cases like Taylor's, they're horrific, and the administration is siding with Taylor. Okay, the administration is doing the right thing by Taylor, or trying to do the right thing by Taylor, as they should be. And I think that we need to make a distinction between cases where the administration is actively participating in the suppression of speech and cases in which the administration is trying to do the right thing in order to punish people for application of crime.
First off, let's make one thing clear. The left loves throwing around the term white privilege as if it's some scientific fact, a universal truth that explains all inequality in society. But here's the thing, calling something privilege doesn't make it real or absolute. It's an interpretation, not evidence. When people say white privilege, they're not pointing out specific racist acts that we can all condemn. They're making a sweeping generalization that judges people based on skin color. And that, my friends, is exactly what we've been fighting against for decades. Now, in the video, the speaker tries to define white privilege as simply societal benefits that come with being white. Okay, fine. But let's test that. Does that mean a poor white kid growing up in rural Kentucky has more privilege than a wealthy black student at an Ivy League school? Of course not. Privilege has many forms: financial, educational, family structure, opportunity, and race is not the sole determinant. So when universities, media, and activists push the idea that white equals privileged, they're not opening a conversation. They're shutting it down. They're saying, you don't get to talk because you're the wrong color. And that's exactly what Shapiro was calling out, and he's absolutely right. In America, we judge people by character, not color. That's not just a slogan, that's a moral principle that defines our civilization. The moment we start assigning moral value to someone's skin tone, whether it's positive or negative, we've abandoned equality. And Shapiro's point is crystal clear. When you tell someone their opinion is less valid because they haven't experienced a certain type of suffering, you're no longer having a rational debate. You're engaging in identity politics. That's not progress, that's regression. Now, the conversation shifts to something serious. Hate incidents on campus, like nooses or racist messages targeting black students. Let's be clear here, those acts are repulsive. Every decent American, regardless of race, should condemn them completely. And Shapiro did just that. He said he'd stand shoulder to shoulder with anyone fighting against actual racism. That's the key difference between the conservative and progressive approaches. Conservatives want to fight real racism, acts, laws, discrimination. Progressives want to fight perceived privilege, feelings, assumptions, group guilt. One fights injustice. The other fights people for being born. And let's talk about something else Shapiro mentioned, his own experience being harassed by the alt-right. See, this is where the left's narrative completely falls apart. They call him far-right, yet the actual far-right extremists hate him. Why? Because he stands for principles, not tribalism. He's targeted by the alt-right because he won't bend to identity politics of any kind. That's integrity. And it shows that true conservatives, patriots who believe in liberty and equality under the law, reject all forms of hate, whether it's coming from the extreme right, the extreme left, or anywhere else. Shapiro also makes a powerful distinction that too many people miss. There's a difference between administrations that suppress free speech and administrations that punish criminal behavior. If a student commits a hate crime, yes, they should face consequences. But if a student simply disagrees with left-wing orthodoxy, that's not hate speech. That's called free speech. And that's the line we have to defend with everything we've got. Because once the government or universities start deciding what opinions are acceptable, you no longer have a democracy, you have an ideological regime. At the end of the day, patriots, this whole debate about white privilege isn't about race, it's about power. It's about who gets to speak, who gets to be heard, and who gets to define morality. And as Americans, we must never accept the idea that some voices are less worthy than others because of their skin color. That's not justice. That's discrimination in disguise. If we truly want equality, we have to reject identity politics from both extremes, and return to the timeless principles of individual responsibility, free speech, and equal treatment under the law. That's what this country was built on. And that's what we're fighting to preserve. If you believe in free speech, real equality, and standing up against both hate and censorship, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe. Because here, we don't apologize for speaking the truth. We defend it, boldly, unapologetically, and patriotically. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. United States.